Hi everyone, I'm Virginia Butler. I'm here with Watchdog reporters Steve Orr and Gary Craig, and they do a lot of other reporting too, but this happens to be about a Watchdog report about the latest legal wrangling concerning late Assemblyman Bill Nojay. Let's just break down, what led up to this point.
Sure. In September, Mr. Nojay was scheduled to appear in federal court on a criminal complaint. As we know, tragically that morning he took his life and fatally shot himself. The criminal complaint remained under seal after that. It had not been opened up in court, and the Democrat and Chronicle went to court to have those papers unsealed, and this Monday a federal judge ruled in our favor and unsealed the complaint, allowing us to see what he was to be charged with.
Okay, so why did we push so hard on this? Some people are
there were people that did object to us trying to get these papers, saying the family should be left to grieve in private, and that it was nobody's business. I mean, the newspaper's belief was that because he was a public official, an elected official, a fairly prominent political figure that who had been accused of crimes, that we thought it would be a good thing for the public to know just what had happened. To be able to weigh what impact it might have had on his activities in public life, and also to judge if the prosecutor, there were some rumbling. People thought, oh, maybe they're going after him for political reasons, so we wanted to be able to judge sort of what they actually had on Mr. Nojay.
Mm-hmm. We're seeking the facts,
yeah,
which in these days of untrustworthy organizations and making that effort to be trustworthy and have accurate facts is important for people to be able to count on us. What did we have to do exactly? It's been time consuming, expensive. I mean, we've had to go through a pretty big process to accomplish this.
Yeah, I think probably not long after the suicide, we filed papers, the newspaper filed papers seeking the unsealing. A federal magistrate judge, a sort of an intermediary level judge, ruled in our favor. It was appealed, and then District Judge David Larimer this week ruled in our favor for many of the very reasons that Steve just mentioned, that this was a public official, that there is really probably a pressing public reason, and very sort of more arcane legal reasons that said that legally they just should not be sealed.
Mm-hmm. And what did we learn from these documents?
We learned the central allegation that had been made against Mr. Nojay was that, which we have reported previously based on sources and information we developed, was that he had accessed money that was in a legal escrow account that he had privileges on, on behalf of a client that he represented, and essentially stolen the money. They alleged $800,000 was taken from this escrow account and used for Mr. Nojay's own purposes over a period of, I think it was about 4 years. The money, according to the government, was used for any number of things. The one thing that jumped out pretty quickly was it was used to fund his campaign for assembly back in 2013 or 2012, excuse me. And we looked at the campaign filings from that race. Essentially, almost all the money he spent was money that he provided himself, and it's our belief that most or all of that money was money that he had taken from this escrow account.
So what are some unanswered questions at this point then? What could that do? What could that mean?
Well, it's funny. We continue to get, as you can imagine, questions from readers. A lot of them. One of them just came today, which was interesting. Was the person who was the the alleged victim of this theft of the escrow account? What steps can be taken? Are there civil actions just to try to basically reimburse that of whatever money they lost in that? There's I don't know how you sort of go backwards like this. I mean, one of the candidates that was a losing candidate, his question is was his entire time in the assembly illegitimate if he basically self-funded his campaign through possibly stolen money? Mm-hmm. How do you reverse that? I just don't really know.
Okay.
And one other interesting thing that came out in the documents that were released pursuant to our legal action was that the FBI had first begun looking into something else that involved Mr. Nojay and other parties late last year. The papers don't say what it was, but they eventually brought Mr. Nojay in and questioned him, and he had agreed with them to cooperate as a cooperating witness, if you will, in that case. And there went with this long back and forth over a period of several weeks where they interviewed him. He gave statements about this other matter that still we're not sure what it was. They decided he was lying and withholding information. They asked to see his computer. He brought his computer in. They went through it and discovered that he had apparently erased a lot of the data that was on there intentionally. They gave him a polygraph. He flunked the polygraph, according to this. What that other investigation was, whether it's still ongoing, whether there were other people they were looking at, is are big questions that are still out there that we're obviously pursuing.
And just to follow up, I mean, Steve, hits the nail on the head with bringing that up. In that, were it not for our getting access to these papers, we wouldn't know that. We would not know that there was an investigation that was more expansive than what we were looking at as far as the original criminal complaint.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing to note from that paperwork that we did, it was filed by a government lawyer, is that in the course of this investigation into this other matter, and then they discovered the money that he had stolen allegedly from this escrow account, which was not what they'd been looking at originally at all. It just kind of came up, apparently. Apparently, Mr. Nojay did admit to the government that, yes, I did take the money. So there seemed to be no question about that part of it. According to this document, anyway, they say that he admitted, yep, I took it. It was the other matter they were looking into where supposedly he was leading them around a little bit and not being truthful. At any rate,
this is not over.
No, it's not. We'll just keep poking away, trying to get more information about this other matter and try and find out who else might have been involved in that. Okay,
and I know a lot of legwork goes into this. It's you guys, other reporters have worked on this story too, and that's continuing. And that's so important, that there's people out there who are willing to take the time and go through the documents and just to clarify sourcing, I think for anyone who's watching this right now, when we talk about sources that we are actually going to use, what goes into determining whether that's a good source or not?
Well, we have some pretty firm and good policies here. And the story that was mentioned, the original story when Mr. Nojay killed himself, we had the facts of the specific allegations in the criminal complaint. There's some things we didn't know exactly how much money, but we knew the alleged embezzlement from an escrow account.
So that was September. We knew
yes,
that, but
and that was based. That was from folks who were willing to talk to us. But we basically 2 or 3, typically at least 3 sources with that they're definitely in the know. It's not somebody who may have heard it secondhand. So there are a lot of things that we've probably through the years known to be true, but didn't report it until we had the sourcing nailed down or became public, because we're very good about that.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for clarifying and for taking us to the next step, and we'll be certainly following to see what happens next. So if you'd like to know more about this story, there will be more coming up at democratandchronicle.com.